And if you vote solidly for the action group on the 12th and put that party in power, you will certainly get that wage.
In 1959, federal elections put Chief Obafemi Awolowo of the Action Group Party as a leader of the opposition in the federal parliament, while his deputy, Chief Samuel Akintola, became the premier and leader of the government of Western Region. Pragmatic leaders had chosen Akintola to succeed Awolowo when the latter resigned the premiership of the Western Region to contest the elections. They reasoned that Akintola was a logical choice, not only because of his previous association with the party, but more so because of his hometown in Yoruba land. The Action Group Party had never won the Ibadan constituency and other constituencies around Ibadan. There have always been intra-ethnic rivalries between Oyo and Ibadan on one hand and Ijebu on the other hand. Chief Akintola was from Ogbomoso, which is in the old Oyo kingdom. Chief Awolowo, on the other hand, was an Ijebu Yoruba. The different intra-Yoruba rivalries did not encourage harmonious unity within the party. Alhaji Adegoke Adelabu, a Yoruba from Ibadan and a member of the rival National Convention of Nigeria Citizens (NCNC), exploited the Action Group's intra-party rivalries to his party's advantage, with Awolowo going to the federal parliament and Adelabu dead due to a motor accident and hence out of the political scene. The AG could win all the states in the old Oyo kingdom as a result of the traditional son of the area, Akintola, as a premier of the region. This strengthened the party's power in the Western Region, and fortunately, it gained the Ibadan area, which was a previous stronghold of the NCNC when Adelabu was alive. With the Western Region in their grasp, party leaders started plans to gain power at the federal level, having won 25 seats in the north and 14 seats in the east in the 1959 elections. But the party could not form the federal government through votes based on the conditions of the country, as the northern region alone was 2.5 times the size of the other regions, that is the western and eastern region put together. So they suggested that the only way to grab power at the federal level was to form a national government which would comprise all the ruling parties in the different regions. The implication was that the Action Group Party would refrain from any serious political activities in the other regions where it had established a small but viable political base. Akintola was in strong favor of forming a national government which would include all the ruling political parties and advocated an approach to the NPC, that is Northern People's Congress, but Awolowo and other party members opposed to it. Instead, they suggested that the party should make advances to the southern NCNC and not the NPC. Their hope was that the AG and the NCNC could team up to contest the next federal elections and would break northern Nigeria and the east into more regions. From these two different suggestions rose opposed factions within the Action Group Party, one under Akintola and the other under Awolowo. The conflict continued discreetly within the party until February 1962, after the party's annual convention at Jos, when Akintola, Ayo Rosiji, that is the party's secretary, and some Western regional ministers walked out of the convention because of disagreement on several matters. As disciplinary measures, the party relieved Rosiji as secretary and replaced him with Samuel Ikoku, leader of the opposition in the Eastern House of Assembly. More importantly, the post of the party's deputy leader, which Akintola held, was abolished. The executive committee of the party also found Akintola guilty on 24 charges, to which he pleaded guilty and asked for forgiveness. The party held firm and decided that Akintola should be removed from his position of deputy leader and Western Regional Premier. The former was done by the party and the latter was to be executed by the governor of the Western Region, Oba Adesoji Aderemi. Akintola accepted the first punishment but rejected the second and maintained that he had not been given the chance to test his popularity on the floor of the Western House of Assembly. A majority of the members signed a petition withdrawing their support from Akintola and presented it to the regional governor. More importantly, They asked the governor to use the powers conferred on him under Section 33 subsection 10 of the region's constitution to remove Akintola from office, to which the governor complied. The relevant section of the constitution states that, quote, "The governor shall not remove the premier from office unless it appears to him that the premier no longer commands the support of a majority of the House of Assembly," end of quote. As expected, Akintola challenged his deposition in a lawsuit at the High Court of Western Nigeria, who then transferred it to the Federal Supreme Court in Lagos to rule on the constitutionality of the dismissal. Meanwhile, the Action Group Party chose a new premier in Alhaji Dauda Adigbenro, whom the governor appointed. The new premier was to seek a vote of no confidence in the Western House of Assembly on May 24, 1962, when Akintola's faction chose to disrupt the proceedings, and because of the ensuing fracas, had the federal government dissolve the House. After both premiers, Adigbenro and Akintola, petitioned the Prime Minister, Alhaji Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, the assembly was reconvened again. Unfortunately, the outcome was as severe, even worse according to witnesses, as the first time. Because of the chaotic atmosphere, the Prime Minister, Alhaji Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, declared a state of emergency in the West on May 29, 1962, before an emergency session of the Federal Parliament. Obafemi Awolowo, leader of the opposition, replied that a state of emergency did not exist in the Western region, as the violence was only confined to the regional House of Assembly, while the rest of the West was calm and quiet. Awolowo's objection was to no avail when the Federal Parliament passed a bill that declared a state of emergency in the West with the right to detain and restrict persons, and the imposition of curfews, with the appointment of Dr. Moses Majakodumi, a distinguished gynecologist, a senator and federal minister of health, as sole administrator of the West. Majakodumi's first act was the service of restrictions on a number of people. These include the two premiers Akintola and Adigbenro, Obafemi Awolowo and R.A. Fani-Kayode. While the restriction orders on Akintola's faction and NCNC members were lifted in barely 2 months, those on the Action Group members remained restricted. Dr. Majakodumi also instituted a commission of inquiry headed by Judge Baptist Ayodola Koka of the Lagos High Court into corporations owned by the Western region, and the commission reviewed instances of poor administration and misappropriation of public funds for the benefit of the Action Group Party. The report came down hard on Awolowo and other AG members in his faction, but exonerated Akintola. The stage for the final act was set in the Commission's report of treasonable felony on Awolowo and his AG members. Searches the Nigeria police carried out in the country during the emergency period in Western Nigeria revealed large quantities of arms and ammunition, which some AG members imported into the country to be used allegedly to overthrow the federal government. Obafemi Awolowo, Anthony Enahoro, as well as some 24 others were charged with treasonable felony and conspiracy to overthrow the federal government. Awolowo was sentenced to 10 years, while Enahoro and others were sentenced to 15 years in prison. These actions led to the demise of the Action Group, and on December 31, 1962, the state of emergency was terminated. On January 1, 1963, Akintola was reinstated as premier of the Western region with the formation of his new party, United People's Party (UPP), which consisted of those former Action Group Party members he was able to win to his side on his expulsion from AG. It was a coalition government which was formed by the UPP and the NCNC, which had previously formed the opposition. The Action Group Party, which had previously formed the government of the Western region, now moved into the opposition. In 1964, the UPP had evolved to be the Nigerian National Democratic Party (NNDP), with Akintola as leader and as friend of the ruling party NPC. Hence, the 1965 Western regional elections gave the NPC another chance of maintaining its political power in the country in the face of all the overwhelming odds against the NNDP. Should the election be free and fair, it was left with one alternative: to rig the elections.